Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste. I'm your host, Steve Boss. 60 minutes of delicious radio, TV, whatever this ends up being, and I'm happy that you're with us. My guest today is Kevin Coupe. He's a writer who for more than 18 years has had his own website, blog, morningnewsbeat.com. Launched before the word blog was coined, MNB provides business news in context and analysis with attitude. Most definitely attitude, Kevin. To more than 30,000 subscribers all over the world. He's the author of Retail Rules, 52 Ways to Achieve Retail Success, a guidebook for competing effectively and efficiently on Main Street, and the co-author with Michael Sansolo of The Big Picture, Essential Business Lessons from the Movies, which uses film narratives to teach about leadership, marketing, and surviving the workplace. Kevin also is the host of Retail Tomorrow, a podcast that features innovators from the worlds of retail brands, technology, and academia, and is an adjunct faculty member of Portland State University's Center for Retail Leadership in Oregon. Also, he happens to be my main source for news Monday through Friday every morning, not only news, but also entertainment. And Kevin, thanks for joining us. Really happy to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here. I've never been described as being part of anything that was going to deliver 60 minutes of delicious anything. So I'm going to put this on my resume.
Well, I happen to know that you love food, so it works perfectly.
Yeah, well, unfortunately.
Oh, by the way, when this is being recorded, there was a little FaceTime session I noticed this morning where you I would like you to share that with everybody.
I was overjoyed because what had happened was there was a story that was in a medical journal that got picked up by Newsweek, then got picked up by me. So this is how my life works. And the story was basically about, or the study was about how people are turning towards plant-based proteins as opposed to animal-based proteins. And if you move more towards plant-based proteins as opposed to animal proteins, it can help you live longer. Well, here's the really good news. Pasta and bread are basically plant-based proteins. So if you eat more pasta and you eat more bread, you're going to live longer. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the best freaking news I have heard in the last 6 months. It's like, I just did it. I did it on my video. I did this FaceTime with the content guy video every morning. And I just smiled at the audience, took out a big pasta pot, and started filling it with water. Listen. And I think there have been other studies that have said that basically pasta and bread, this one I'm a little more dubious about, can help you lose weight. That would not be my experience, but that may be more a matter of quantity.
Right. That may have something to do with it. My wife and I both separately thought, it's raining today, and so we thought, okay, let's make some vegetable soup for lunch, right? And I said to her, that's not going to just work for me, just vegetable soup. I'm going to probably have to add some pasta to it. And she said, but we're having pasta tomorrow. And I said, there's a problem?
I mean, pasta is one of those, great things that you could have every day. I mean, I could eat pasta every day. I could eat pizza every day. I mean, I don't, and I do. But I mean, those are those things that, I could easily have a different pasta dish every day in all its forms. I mean, risotto, I could eat a seafood risotto once a week, but don't, because it would be, I wouldn't fit in this screen. I did that. What other secrets would you like to know about me, Steve?
Oh, this is great, Kevin. I mean, but whenever anybody, this is so funny for me because whenever anybody mentions something like you mentioned seafood risotto, immediately for me, there's some memory that just pops right into my brain. Like, oh, wow, seafood risotto, Liguria, wonderful little trattoria. I went to the bathroom. The guy I was with, he ordered while I was in the bathroom, and that's what he ordered. And, it was right on the sea. So of course it was fresh. So that's, you're talking to somebody who.
I think I'm a firm believer in that. One of the things that I did, this is not my original idea, but one of the things that I do with my classes at Portland State University is, and I teach during the summer. This is the first summer in almost a decade that I haven't been there because classes are not taking place in the classroom, and my class got canceled anyway. So, because everything's screwed up because of the pandemic. And I'm not a professional teacher. I don't have a master's, a PhD. I'm just a writer with some experience. But one of the things I always teach my students is the importance of being able to communicate. And I try and, hammer into their heads the fact that clear writing equals clear thinking, and clear thinking equals clear writing. And listen, whatever job you have, in all likelihood, if you're able to write a decent sentence and communicate, cogent, thought out ideas to whoever you're writing to, that will advance your career. It's one of the great skills that a lot of people today don't have. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always pushing this. So every week they have to write an essay. I don't ask for a long essay. In fact, I don't want a 10-page essay, because if they write it, I got to read it. So I don't want that. I try and pose provocative questions and say, but show me that you're thinking, and show me how you're thinking. But always the first week, their essay is sort of sets them up for the rest of the semester, and that is, write me an essay about your most memorable meal. Mm. Because if you can do that, you can you'll know what it was. Almost everybody can do this. You can know what it was, where it was, who you were with, and why it was memorable. Right. Write me an essay about that. And I actually stole this idea from a wonderful writer named Bob Morris, who has written a series of detective novels. Great guy. He's taught that in Florida at Rollins, I think. And he used to do it with his creative writing class. I do it with my business marketing class. And the essays are always great. And I'll never forget, and I've done this now, 8 or 9 years. The most memorable essay I ever got was in the first year. Now, I will tell you parenthetically that the mix of students at Portland State tends to skew a little older. Some of them are married, some of them are they all have jobs. It's a night class once a week. They're coming in, they have, so they have other things going on in their lives, and they tend to have more life experience. So one guy turned in an essay, and he was in his mid-30s. And he turned in, so it was the first week, and I didn't really know him at that point. So he turned in an essay, and I can pretty much quote it from memory. Listen, most people would write, I was on a beach with my girlfriend, I was with my grandmother before she died, I was, whatever, graduation, that kind of stuff. This was his essay. My most memorable meal consisted of minute rice and A1 steak sauce. I was in Afghanistan, and it was Christmas Day, and when we returned from patrol, that's all that was left. But it didn't matter, because I was with my brothers, and they would have died for me, and I would have died for them. I mean, blew me away. Teaches all sorts of lessons. First of all, a really compelling and effective story doesn't have to be 10,000 words. That's maybe 35, 40 words. And it just, you know everything you need to know about that moment in terms of clear communication. The other great lesson and I use this often with retailers. The other great lesson about that is that an average supermarket has 40,000 items, let's say. And a lot of them are considered commodity items, right? That's just minute rice. That's just A1 steak sauce. But something, those items may be special to somebody. And in fact, to use a word that gets bandied around a lot right now because of the pandemic, they may in fact be essential to somebody. And so retailers, if you're going to put it on your shelf, I always argue, act like it's special. Act like it's special to somebody, because it probably is. And if it's not special to somebody, if it's not essential to somebody, then why are you carrying it? And so, but I'll never forget that story. Well, it's funny when you talk about risotto. So you're going to ask me one question, and I'm going to talk for 25 minutes. So feel free.
It's fine.
So I can remember I can remember me, I don't know, it's got to be 10 years ago, something like that, 8, 9, 10 years ago, that I was working on a video project. I've had a lot of weird things in my life. And I was actually producing a video project as well as doing the on-camera work about seafood sourcing. So I went to Patagonia and we shot where a boat came in with shrimp, and then they took it to a processing plant, and they actually put it back on a boat and they brought it to Vigo, Spain, where it got packaged, which was weird. I don't understand the economics of it, but that's how they did it. And so I was both in Patagonia and then in Vigo, Spain. And we're in Vigo, Spain. After we're done with the shoot, it's maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the camera crew we were working with said, we should have lunch. And the guy, my producer and I said, yeah, great. They take us to this little shack on the water. And in this shack, I had the most amazing platter of black squid ink pasta covered with seafood, and a wine called Albarino. Now, Albarino is not a well-known wine in the United States. It was one of the best meals of my life. Would be in my most memorable meal category, except I wouldn't use it because my wife would say I wasn't there. So. But it was an amazing meal, and to this day, Albarino is one of my favorite wines. And whenever we have it, I think of that specific place. Mm-hmm. And that's, isn't that the magic of food and wine, right? That we do have these kind of visceral gut memories that connect us to the places we were and the people we were with and the reason we were there. And they often tell a story.
Yes.
Sometimes a good story, sometimes a bad story, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's, and frankly, it's stuff like that makes me interested in writing about food and wine and the industry that puts it out there, because that kind of stuff's much more interesting to me than spreadsheets and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. And I love to actually, if I'm going somewhere, I like to try to find not only the food that is, we'll say, that area is known for, the dishes that people make in their own homes, but also the wine that, as you mentioned, is part of that particular place. That really then it connects all different aspects of the entire system that you're in, and you actually get to experience what the people who live there experience. And I love that whole idea.
So I'll tell you another food related story about that same trip, not Vigo, but the other side of Patagonia. So we're out doing all this video work. And one of the things we asked the local crew is, okay, we knew Malbec was big in Argentina, right? That's their national wine. So we said, is there a Malbec we should try? And the guy wrote it down for us and stuff. So my life is such that that when I'm doing projects like that, I still have to write morning newsbeat. It comes out 5 mornings a week, 48, 45, 46, 47 weeks a year. So, it's not like I go out and party at night. On weeknights, it's a school night for me. I have to stay home and do my homework. And so I'm in Patagonia and in this little town called Puerto Madryn. And so I remember the date, and because it was November 4th of 2008. So I would have been 54, I guess. Yeah, I guess. Anyway, my math is not good. I was born in 54, 48, 54 I would have been. And so I go into the bar of this little tiny hotel we're staying in, thinking I'm going to have a glass of Malbec. And I go there's nobody in the bar. And this, by the way, the bar/restaurant is the only place there that had Wi-Fi. So it wasn't like I could work in my room. I was to sit with my laptop and I was going to work there. So I figured I'll get a glass of Malbec. It's like nobody there except the woman behind the bar. And I said, and I had a piece of paper. I said, can I have a glass of that, please? And she says, English, I remember being pretty good, said, we don't sell it by the glass. We sell it only by the bottle. I said, man, how much is a bottle? And it worked out that it was about, I don't know, $8. So I said, I'll take a bottle. Sounds pretty good. And so I get the bottle and I go over and sit at the table. Now, November 4th, 2008, were two things. First of all, it was my birthday. That's how I remember the date. It was also election day here in the United States. And I'm sitting there and on part of my screen, I'm watching CNN because I'm watching the election returns. And I'm writing and I'm drinking. Not a great combination, but that's what I'm doing. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, I had voted before I left the country, but I was pretty sure, no matter what the poll said, that John McCain was going to win. I just thought he was because I just didn't think the country was going to elect a black president. And I'm sitting there watching it, and suddenly I'm looking at the numbers and I'm going, well, we know Obama's going to win California. We know he's going to win Alaska. Not Alaska, Hawaii. And he's going to win Washington and Oregon. And I started to do the math, and all of a sudden I realized that we had elected the first black president in United States history. And I remember that so specifically. And, no matter how you feel politically, it was a big deal. And yeah, it was, I remember that day. But again, I connected to the Malbec.
Right. I love that.
There, just drinking Malbec. It was great. And whenever I have Malbec, I think of that.
It's no wonder that, we really understand each other, I think. So it's perfect.
This is why I love my job.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, maybe we should talk a little bit about the world of retail, and specifically, I would love to talk about the world of retail as it applies to food, talking about not only consumer retail in terms of stores where people shop for their food, but restaurant industry, all those things, because I think there's a lot that I know you have a lot to say about those things. And I thought maybe it would be good to start out at some point. I don't remember exactly when you're going to be giving an address to one of the natural food industry groups. And
yeah, I'm actually working on it. It's interesting. I mean, one of the casualties of the pandemic, and by the way, not in no way, shape, or form one of the big casualties, but one of the casualties has been the fact that people aren't running conferences anymore. And people are doing one of two things. They're either canceling them or they're trying to do them in a remote virtual fashion. And I have for most of the last 2 decades, I give anywhere from 20 to 30 speeches a year, and around the country, and love doing it. It's one of the things I like most about my work, because I get to go to interesting places. I get to have interesting wine, interesting food, and people pay me to stand in front of them and pontificate. It's like at the bits.
Doesn't get any better.
And anyway, so but now I'm learning the notion of doing these things remotely and figuring out how do I communicate differently to people. Because the last thing somebody wants to do is just look at me on a screen and listen to me for a half an hour or 45 minutes. I don't want to do that. And I love the sound of my own voice. And so you just learn different things. I just did a thing the other day for the Organic Produce Summit, which normally takes place in Monterey, California. Again, a good gig. And Jim Donald, who is a former CEO of Starbucks, former CEO of Extended Stay Hotels, and now the co-chairman of Albertsons and all its many banners. He and I were scheduled to do, Jim Donald in conversation with Kevin Coupe as a keynote. They get canceled, and so we did a Zoom thing and had a lot of fun doing it. And so that's one way to approach it. And then I'm doing this thing for the Independent Natural Food Merchandisers Association, or market retailer, Independent Natural Food Retailers Association. I should get that right. And basically what I'm doing is I'm shooting this 45-minute, 50-minute thing in like 4-minute segments. And they're going to be most of them happening in different places, and trying to expound on some lessons that I think that are worth bringing to the business. Long answer to a short question. I apologize.
Actually, do you mind telling us a little bit about some of the observations that you're going to make?
Sure. My notes here somewhere. 1 second.
Yes, absolutely. We're talking with Kevin Coupe. He is the inspiration behind Morning Newsbeat, and you can find him at morningnewsbeat.com.
I would appreciate that. Love new readers. You know, I have one of my premises is that I think I mentioned before, the average supermarket has 40,000 items, and I'm a firm believer that not everybody, but a lot of retailers would do much better if they had a lot fewer items. You know, how many of those 40,000 items are essential? 4,000, 400? I mean, there is a premise, a marketing retailing premise that says is 80% of your business is usually done by 20% of your items. So what are you doing with the other 80% of your items? Now, some of them you want to have because you want to have a little bit of variety, but some of them you don't necessarily need to have, or there's other ways to do it, especially in a time, and we can talk a little bit about e-commerce if you like, at a time when instead of having 40,000 items in my store, maybe I need to have, 4,000 or 2,000 items in my store and make it all fresh stuff that's unique to me as a retailer. And the other stuff you just buy online. You don't necessarily have to be in the store for that. There is no advantage in going to a store to buy, a Cashy cereal or cornflakes or organic cookies or Oreos. Or Tide or next generation. There's no advantage in that, right? You can buy that stuff online, and a lot of people do, and more will. And so why are you providing aisles and aisles of very expensive shelf space for products that you don't necessarily have to have in the store? There's different ways to slice that, and we can come back to that if you like. The example that I'm using in the piece that I'm doing is there's a store here in Connecticut where I live 10 months a year, 12 months this year, called Stu Leonard's. And Stu Leonard's is an iconic retailer. And the store, and they have 7 stores now in New York. The original's here in Connecticut. They have also stores in New York and New Jersey. And Stu Leonard's has about 1,200 SKUs, right? And largely fresh. What's packaged is mostly private label. And each of the stores does $2 million plus per week in sales. So start to do the math. You've got 7 stores, each one doing, let's keep the math simple, $2 million a week in sales, 52 weeks a year. And trust me, they're doing a lot more than $2 million on certain weeks of those years. That's a sizable business with about 1,200, 1,300 SKUs, whatever it happens to be. And because what they've done is they've said, this is who we are. We are basically a dairy store, a farm store with a focus on fresh. Not the cheapest, not the most expensive. I mean, I wouldn't, they're not a Zabar's. They're not really expensive, but they're not the least expensive in the market either. And they're putting it on quality and an entertainment experience. One of the things they have is a directed traffic flow. So every other retailer during the pandemic has had to start putting in directional signs in their aisles. They always had a one aisle. They just want, it's like a maze. You walk around the store. So they're an example of a retailer who now they've been doing it for 50 years or something. They decide we're not going to try and be everything to everybody. We're going to be this thing. We're going to establish our value proposition, and we're really going to work it hard. And we're going to be as essential as we can be. So that's a recommendation I'm sort of making to people. I'm going to talk a little bit about the notion that food trucks a lot of food trucks in this country are sort of changing their business model. We think of food trucks as being things that develop in pods, right, in cities. Everybody comes out of their offices, they go to the food truck, they get their lunch, they go back, right? That's their model. Well, guess what? First of all, a lot of the cities have emptied out because nobody's coming to work. Okay, so parking a food truck and expect everybody to come down to lunch and wait in line like this close together, that's not going to work either. So there's a trend now where a number of food trucks, what they're doing is they said, we'll go to the suburbs because that's where the people are. But we're going to have to figure out different ways to communicate with our customers and our potential customers. So they're going online. They're selling things in advance. They're doing pickup instead of waiting online. And they're bringing. I've always found that food trucks bring a certain sense of culinary adventure. You know, and when I'm in Portland, Oregon, I love going to the food trucks because they're always, you know, they tend to be ethnic. They're just good. They're interesting. They're different. Now they're not expensive. They tend to move the needle a little bit. So I suggested, listen, you know, if you're a retailer, maybe you ought to find a food truck and team up with them. Have them help you move the ball forward. I'll talk a little bit. I'm going to talk a lot about e-commerce, but I'm going to leave that one later. I'll tell you one last story that I'll share. I can tell you more, but you'll just get bored. I'm going to tell a story about a retailer in Portland, Oregon, called Stumptown Coffee. Small concern, and I was once. So I love going to Stumptown. I'm a Starbucks guy most of the year, but when I'm in Portland, I love to go to Stumptown. And one of the reasons is I was once sitting at a Stumptown Coffee in Portland, Oregon. And I'm sitting at the bar, and I'd ordered my coffee, and I was waiting for it to come. And as I'm sitting at the bar, I'm watching the baristas do their thing. And the guy starts making mine. I had ordered a large non-fat latte, and which it's very cool. They serve it in a beer pint glass, which is very cool. And I'm watching, and the guy's making it and stuff like that. He does it. He looks at it, throws it out. That's weird. Gets another glass, starts to do the thing again. Looks at it, throws it out. All right, this is odd. Calls over another guy, and they work on it together. Right? Finish the latte. It's gorgeous. Has a little squiggly thing on the top with the foam, and they give it to me. So I said to the second guy who'd come over to help, I said, okay, I got to ask, what was that about? And he said, well, it ends up that a non-fat latte is actually hard to make. It's hard to get the foam right so you can do the little design on the top. It's just the way, it's the combination of factors. It's harder to do. And this guy's new. So, you know, I just helped him. He'll figure it out. I said, I know. I said, I'm fascinated by this, but I have a question for you. I said, sure. So if I'd ordered it to go, which means I would have gotten it in a paper cup with a top on it, would you have gone to all that trouble? Because I never would have seen the squiggle. And he looked at me and he said, sir, it's only worth doing if you do it right. What a great story, right? And so that, I think that's an important cultural thing that companies have to really inculcate in their people. Is listen, do it right. And if you got to throw out 2 lattes to get to one that works, it's worth it in the end. You know, first of all, it's better, right? It's better. And you create loyalty. And in this case, created a story that I have told now 1,000 times.
Right. And I'm going to repeat too.
In one of the books that I've written, I just tell the story because it's a great story. Mm-hmm. So these are the kinds of things I'm going to do for the folks I'm speaking to, or I'm putting this presentation together for in August.
I think it's worth continuing to discuss, because what we have is an acceleration of larger companies continuing to take more and more share of the marketplace, food market. Since we're going to center around food, the food marketplace. We have the growth, and I do want you to talk about online too. We have the growth of online sales accelerating at a much greater pace than it was pre-pandemic, even though it was already accelerating at a great pace at that time.
I mean, basically what happened was, one of the reasons, even Amazon, which was ahead of everybody, Amazon had problems, right? Or the early days of the pandemic. And the reason is that Amazon, being Amazon, was already knew where they needed to be in 2 years. And they basically had the infrastructure laid down So 2 years from now, they would be ready, right? The problem was we accelerated 3 to 4 years into the future, and even Amazon wasn't ready for that. And so, and that's one of the reasons they got caught. It blew up the supply chain on so many levels. Everybody was either ordering for pickup or delivery. It went from, 5, 6, 7%, depending on the market, to 30, 35, 40%. And the question is, will it go back? This is very rude of me. I'm asking the questions and answering them.
I love it.
But the thing is yeah, it'll back off a little bit. Of course it will. It just will by nature as once people are comfortable going back in the stores. Although at the moment I don't see any great evidence that nationally that's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, things seem to be. I live just outside New York, so we had our spike back in March and early April. Everybody else in the country is New York now. In New York and New England are the only places in the country where it's, as we record this, I don't want to jinx it, but where things are relatively stable or decreasing, which is extraordinary. But I do think that people have gotten used to the idea that they're, to go back to something we were talking about before, there are things they don't need to go to the store for, right? Now, you may want to go to the store to get your, oops, I've just kicked the camera, I apologize. There may be, you want to go to the store maybe to pick out your own meat. I'm one of those people, right? I love ordering online. I kind of want to pick out my own steaks or my, or fish and stuff like that. I don't mind so much ground beef because that's, if I'm making hamburgers, that's fine. But in terms of, cereal and, basic stuff, I don't want to go to the store. Why bother? So as more and more people begin to feel that way, I think you're going to start to see, I think you're going to continue to see some growth. You'll see it back off a little bit, but I think it's going to continue to grow, especially as companies get more aggressive about it. I mean, just recently Walmart announced Walmart Plus, which is going to be their version of Prime. A little bit less expensive than Prime. Although listen, I think everybody competes with everybody. But I do think that, Walmart customers and Amazon customers just tend to be different to some degree. And I think Walmart and Amazon are very different companies. Walmart is a retailer. Walmart wants to sell stuff. I think Amazon has much more, for better and for worse, more grandiose sort of ambitions in terms of what they want to do. But you can see that in all the other stuff they're in, including things like Prime Video. They just have a different vision of their world. I mean, I have Alexa here. I mean, I don't know that that Walmart would ever get into developing its own Alexa. It might partner with somebody. It might work with Google or whoever. I just think they have different views of the world. But I do think that we're going to continue to see growth on this side. And I really do believe that stores need to sort of think about that and say, how are we going to embrace it? Or how are we going to compete against it? I mean, if you've said to yourself, I don't want to be in the e-commerce business. And I know retailers like that. They just, retailers, especially smaller independent retailers who say, we have spent sometimes generations or decades developing a store that people want to come shop in, that it's a great place to come. It's entertaining. It's and we've spent time and money and effort. I don't want people not to have to come to the store. I mean, that is a perfectly legitimate point of view, but you at least have to realize, if you have that point of view, that you're competing against e-commerce. And so that store better be compelling. That store better be entertaining. You better give people really good reasons to come to it. Otherwise, you just can't lose. You can't. There are retailers out there. I'm going to say something politically incorrect, but I will. Often they have the letters IGA in their name, who just believe, well, because we're hometown proud, people should come to us. And I think that is a I'm not sure if the words, I should know this, I'm a writer. I'm not sure if it's a specious notion or a fallacious notion, and it may in fact be both. It's like, no, you have no moral superiority because you're a one-store independent. People are not. People are going to go where they can get what they want, when they want it, how they want it, for a price they think is appropriate. And ultimately, the words I like to use they want a store and a product and products that are both relevant to their lives and resonant to their lives. Relevance being it appeals to your head, resonant and that appeals to your heart, or in the food business, your stomach, right? And that's what stores have to do. You can't just open the store and say, I got 40,000 items and it's clean and I got nice people. I'm hometown proud. I have the friendliest people in town. It's like, really? Even if you do, I hate to say it, one of us, hopefully you will get many cards and letters when I say this, that's not worth that much anymore. And this whole notion of store shopping being somehow morally superior to shopping online, again, I don't get it. Because my argument would be if I can sit down on my computer and I can order from Amazon and I can order most of the stuff that I need in a given week, what does that give me time to do? Well, it gives me time I can read a book, I will go to a movie, or I can watch a movie at home because nobody's going to movies right now. I can take a walk with my wife. I can walk the dog. If my kids were little, I could play with them. They're older now, so we'll have Tito's together. There's many more things that I can do with that time that I think are more valuable than the act of going to the store. And this is the stuff that retailers have to compete against, and that's one of the reasons, that's why Prime is such an enormous power for Amazon. We'll see how Walmart kind of does theirs. But Prime is an amazing power for Amazon because they basically create a system that rewards you for coming back frequently, placing small orders, right? It used to be before Prime, not that there was that much e-commerce before Prime, but you would kind of compile a list, right? You'd say, okay, well, I need to get it over $50 so I get free, maybe I get free shipping, or it's just in my interest to create a long list. So you'd constantly add to the list, but you wouldn't pull the trigger. And Prime changed that because it basically said, no, pull the trigger. It's okay because you've paid, it used to be $79, now it's $129, $119, I don't remember. So you already paid for it. If you only place one order on Amazon and it's $119 for Prime, and you only place one order during the year, it's the most expensive shipping you'll ever pay for. But if you place 119 orders on Amazon, it's the cheapest shipping you'll ever get in your life. And I will tell you, I wish we only placed 119 orders a year on Amazon. Saving a lot of money. And again, another story, I can remember when I had that realization. And it was pretty early. I've been an Amazon customer since 1996 or 7. I'm an early adopter. And I can remember it was shortly after Prime was introduced, and I think that's about 15 or 16 years ago. And it was early December. I was in Tokyo. I get to go to pretty cool places. It's obnoxious now that I'm doing, I was an Argentinian thing. I don't mean it to be obnoxious. And I was in Tokyo, and because my wife is a school teacher, I would often be the one, because my schedule's more as a writer, my schedule's more flexible than hers. So I would do a lot of the Christmas shopping. And I was the one with the Amazon account. So I would do that. And I can remember being in Tokyo in my hotel room, and working on whatever project I was on. I think it was another video project. And I was working on that, and I was working on Morning News Beat. I had an idea for a Christmas present for somebody. So I ordered it, and I had it on Prime, so it was free shipping. And then I went back to work, and I don't know, 20 minutes later, I had another idea. I was like, oh, that's a good idea too. And I ordered it. And at that moment, I said to myself, ooh, they have just made this so easy for me that I'll just constantly pull the trigger because it doesn't cost me anymore. In fact, I'm getting greater value out of the program by doing it that way. And that's sheer genius. And that's a hard thing for retailers to compete with. The other thing that retailers have to compete with is subscribe and save. Do you know what subscribe? I'm doing a monologue here. I'm really sorry.
That's
Do you know
beautiful.
what subscribe and save is?
I do, but let's tell us about it.
So for your audience doesn't know, subscribe and save is a service that has been offered by Amazon for probably around the same amount of time as Prime. And the notion is there are products that you use a lot. And therefore you can get what's called auto replenishment. So in our household, there's probably a dozen items that we have an auto replenishment, subscribe and save. Tide, paper towel, laundry, dishwasher detergent, soap, vast number of things, razor blades, and you can get them delivered every other week, every month, every other month. You can set up the schedule yourself. You get a little bit of a discount by doing it on subscribe and save. Prices are not, they're not like rock bottom cheap, but they're like Costco prices, right? And so what happens is once a month, we get a whole bunch of boxes here. And it's all the stuff that I no longer have to go to the store to buy. Mm-hmm. That's critically important because what they have done is they've taken me out of the market. All those things that I used to buy in the store, I'm now getting delivered, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a powerful message. If you were to take subscribe and save out of Amazon and just evaluate it on its own, I believe it's a top 10 retailer in this country, just by itself.
Right.
And so, and that's something that it's fascinating to me that more retailers have not adopted that sort of approach to things. I have a buddy of mine who actually started subscribe and save at Amazon, and he is now that he and a bunch of people have left, and now they have created a business called Replenium, which basically is subscribe and save for everybody else. So hopefully we'll see a lot more of that. Not just because I'd like my friend's business to, go off the charts, but also because I think it's something that retailers can do, and it's not just about, and it's good for retailers and it's good for consumers goods. What happens is it's not just auto replenishment. It's the creation of a foundation of a relationship between the shopper and the shop.
Right.
Right. You've got that thing. And by the way, how great would it have been to have had a subscription to paper towels and toilet paper about in March or April. Now, Amazon had trouble, I know this from experience, had trouble delivering on some of that simply because of the shortages that affected everybody, affected Amazon as well. But it was still better than most people were. And it's a relationship. Amazon took care of me. I'm a good customer of Amazon and have been for 25 years. And that's something that a lot of retailers can't say.
Let's key in on that word, because I was actually thinking about that word relationship before this part of the discussion, because I'm trying to really understand how small independent retailers can move to, if not a competitive advantage, at least leveling the playing field so that they can, that sector of the marketplace doesn't just disappear. And it seems to me that the core has to be built on relationship, but it can't just be, like you mentioned before, it can't just be somebody smiles at you when you walk in the door.
Or it can't even just be, a lot of retailers have what they like to call loyalty marketing programs, right? And back in the day, before we had cell phones, people would have, a keychain, right? And how many people do you know who had like 19 different little tabs on their, right? Right. Each one for a loyalty marketing program, usually at 3 or 4 competitors. So they weren't really loyal. And because they were just cherry picking in terms of where they would go for whoever had the best deals. And retailers mistook these discount programs, which are fine, all right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. They mistook that for a loyalty program. Right? They didn't realize that, what they were trying to do, with a certain amount of success, was buy loyalty from their consumers. But they would only buy it so far. The piece of it they didn't get, in my view, was the notion of showing loyalty. Right? If I have a loyalty program, it's not that I want you to be loyal to me. I should show you that I'm loyal to you. That is a very different thing. And there's lots of ways to do it. One of my favorite retailers around the country is Dorothy Lane Market, 3-store business in Dayton, Ohio. Now, you wouldn't necessarily think about Dayton, Ohio as being as being a culinary paradise. But in fact, Dorothy Lane's 3 stores are as good as any food retailers in the country. They stopped, 20, 25 years ago, they stopped doing newspaper advertising. And they went right to direct mail to the consumers. And now it's like all online because nobody does direct mail anymore. And at the same time, what they did is they created sort of a tiered loyalty scheme, if you will. So, and it's gone through different permutations over the years and improved, and they've added nuance to it. But basically, it was the top, let's say the top 10% of customers in terms of spend, they were basically treated one way, right? Next 10%, they were treated another way. Everybody's treated well. But, the people at the top really got different kinds of deals and different kinds of accessibility. They might get invited to a wine tasting. They might be given a cooking class. They might have been, lots of stuff, and maybe better discounts included in there. Second tier didn't get invited to quite as much stuff and didn't get quite the same discounts. And the people in the third tier, they a little bit lower. And then beyond that, there was everybody else. And what the people who Norman Main is the name of the guy who runs the company. He and his son Calvin, 2 of the best people on the planet. And I can remember talking to Norman about this, and said, what happens if somebody in tier 3 talks to somebody in tier 1 and finds out they got a better deal and they come into you and complain? And he basically said, Kevin, I look at them and I say, I would love you to be part of tier 1. That's up to you. Right? I mean, that's what I would love you, but this is the way it works. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you something else about Norman Main. And it was one of the smartest things that Norman ever said to me once. He said, and they've been written up everywhere, right? They've been written up a lot over the years. Everybody has celebrated them for being such a terrific company. And he told me once that one of his main goals was to make sure that his people understood the following: we are good. We're also very lucky, and we have been shown by many people, and many people believe us to be an iconic retailer. He said, we have a great reputation, but a reputation is what you had yesterday. And today you got to earn it all over again. Because there will be somebody who walks into the store today who will have never been to us before and will have never read a thing about us. And we got to earn it all over again. Mm-hmm. And, I think that is such a smart point of view. I've always expended that, I've used that in examples when people will talk about things like American exceptionalism. And I believe American exceptionalism may be true, but it only was what you did yesterday. Mm-hmm. What you do today proves it again. Right. And you constantly have to demonstrate it. And it's, mm-hmm. You're only as somebody listening to us or watching us right now, maybe watching this for the first time. So you may have 1,000 great programs behind you, right? But if this one with me is a dog, it doesn't matter, right? And I feel the same way about morning news beat. And listen, I know I have morning news beats there's A material and there's B material.
Right, definitely.
Okay. And sometimes I'm at the mercies of the news gods, mm-hmm. But sometimes I got to fit, it's my job to say, even if the news stories are not particularly compelling, I better be compelling in how I talk about them. Mm-hmm. I better come up with an idea to make somebody laugh or make somebody mm-hmm. say, I hadn't thought of it that way before. And that's what everybody has to do.
Right. And it goes back to the latte story. And it also goes back to, there's a story that I experienced in a restaurant in New York, Hearth. Marco Canora, owner, chef. And one time when I was there, eating in the kitchen because they have 5 seats or 6 seats in the kitchen always that I don't know now, but they did at that time. They didn't reserve them. You had to just.
Not at the moment.
Right. Yeah, that's right. But you had to get there at the right time. Anyway, I noticed numerous people talking to him after their meal and just coming up and saying, hey, thanks so much. It was really great. I just love your food. And I said to him as we were leaving, I said, it must be nice to have people who really appreciate what you do. And he looked at me with a very stoic look on his face and just said, I'm only as good as the last plate that comes out of my kitchen. And that's just what you said. And it's very, very, it's really fascinating. And it also speaks to us always wanting to, we always want to do better. We always want to do more. And if we act like that, if that's what we look at as our mission, if we're a retailer, then we're going to have a chance anyway. A small retailer, especially, we're going to have a chance of making it as the retail world continues to evolve.
Well, and another component of that is I always think is every retailer's goal, and this goes for retailers, restaurants, and frankly, any business when you think about it, is to make your customers feel like a regular, right? Because that is Cheers, right? Everybody wants to go. The reason Cheers is such a hit is we all want to go to that place, right? Everybody knows our
yes.
Everybody, it's just like, it's like family. Mm-hmm. And I was once, another story. So I was in Seattle. This is now probably going back maybe 20 years. I was in Seattle. It was, as it often is at certain times here in Seattle, it was a rainy night. It's kind of cold outside. And I was walking down near the Pike Place Market, and I saw a place called Etta's, ETTA''S. And I said, that looks kind of cool. I'll go in there. So I go in, and I go over, and I sit at the bar, and end up striking up a conversation with the bartender, this guy named Morgan. Talking to Morgan, and I have a little wine, a little, the little seafood stuff was great. I probably was there for a couple hours, right? I had no place to go that night. It's great. So I get to Seattle a couple of times a year. So maybe 6 months later, I couldn't even tell you. It may have been longer than that. I'm back in Seattle. I said, I'm going back to that place. That place was good. I walk in the door, make a left to go towards the bar. Morgan's behind the bar. He goes, Karen! It's like I had a Norm moment, right? From Cheers. Went over, sat in the same place, and picked it up. And it was Morgan who was magic, because he made everybody who came in, and I watched him do it with other people. I mean, it wasn't like I was so great. He made people feel like a regular. And he's a wonderful guy. Sad news is Etta's has closed because of the pandemic. Things are still closed down as we record this in Seattle. I hope they reopen, just because I thought Etta's and Morgan would be part of my life forever. And it's just one of those places. And that's a magical thing, is you want people to feel like a regular when they come to the door. And sometimes, by the way, that's enabled by technology, right? Technology can allow you to do that. I'm a regular on Amazon. Prime recognizes that. I get, they respond to my previous behavior by sending me stuff about things that are relevant to me. And it's an amazingly powerful thing for retailers to do. Mm-hmm. I love Morgan. And I'm if your folks ever get to, any of your audience ever gets out to Seattle, go look for Etta's. I hope it's open. Go to the bar, ask for Morgan, and when you're there, say, Kevin sent me. And you can do that because I've written 2 books. Morgan's in both of them. I've pledged to myself, he's my lucky charm. I'm going to put him in every book I ever write. And people have, over the years, I'll get an email from them saying, you keep sending me people I don't know anything. Keep going, Kevin sent me. It's like, how great is this?
Yeah, that is totally awesome. And I want to mention this rule that you posted at some point recently, I think, and it was Coupe's rule number 12 of post-pandemic retail behavior. And it is, build on your strengths, reduce or eliminate your weaknesses. Focus on the stuff that differentiates you, not the stuff that makes you the same. And that's what we've been talking about a lot, actually. And I think it's a terrific it's what engages us. I mean, looking at just you and me as consumers and everyone who's part of this audience that's listening to us or watching us, we all want to have a relationship. We all want to feel important. We all want to feel special. And when we engage with whatever source it is, if somebody has that as their primary mission to make us feel special, we're going to remember it. That's just the bottom line.
Yes, people, and people want to be part of a community, and maybe now more than ever, right? I mean, just because we've all been separated. I've always been a hugger. Other than my wife and my kids, I can't hug anybody. It's like making me crazy. But I do think that people want to be part of something like that. And it's one of the things that, it was always part of my back of my mind goal when I started Morning Newsbeat all those years ago, was that I've been a writer for a long time. I've written to the industry for a long time, but my sense was that most stuff wasn't really well written. Most stuff wasn't as provocative as I thought it needed to be. And most stuff was sort of just, here's the story, boom, out. And they weren't interested in creating community. And I've created this, I haven't done it. And in fact, this community has sort of created itself over the years of, 25, 30,000 people and who read Morning Newsbeat on a regular basis. And nothing makes me happier, because I'm a bit of a Weisenheimer, to use a word my grandfather probably would have used. And I love it when I'll write a story and I'll make a joke and somebody comes back to me and out Weisenheims me. That's the word. And it is the thing one of the things that makes me happiest on the planet, because they get it, right? And they're like embracing the part of being the community, and it's just terrific. I sit here, I laugh sometimes, but these are, it's wonderful. And I'm sure it's the same way with your audience, right? They're part of this, and that it has power to it.
Yes.
It has absolutely power to it. And
yes.
But I do believe that being different, having a perspective, maybe even to the point of having a purpose, being, as opposed to just kind of being middle of the road. All those things can be a superpower. It can really help a retailer go forward. I used to say that the middle of the road is where you find roadkill, and mainstream is where you go to drown. And I believe in those things in terms of being marketing tenets. And it gets you nowhere. It's much better to work the edges if you can clearly define the edges and give them meaning in the hearts and the souls and the minds and the stomachs of whoever your customers happen to be.
It's been such a pleasure talking with you. We haven't even gotten to almost all the different things that, many of the topics that we're going to discuss. So I'm going to ask you if we can do this again sometime.
I'd love to. This was fun.
Okay. That would be really great. And I so appreciate it.
Oh, anytime.
Kevin Coupe has been our guest on Great Taste. He is the foundation, the source, the everything behind Morning Newsbeat. You can check that out at morningnewsbeat.com. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
I'm Steve Boss, and you've been, whatever you've been doing, listening, watching, whatever, to Great Taste, 60 minutes of deliciousness.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.